Welcome back to the Mental Plateau. On today's episode, we are doing a little switch up where I am being interviewed by a student ambassador of Humanity Rising, where Debbie Ferruzzi is doing an excellent job as CEO of a student-led movement to create a more compassionate and better world through service. I'm proud to announce my partnership with Humanity Rising for future episodes, and I can't wait to expand our reach as a podcast and organization. In this episode, we venture through several interviews that I've done, as well as the aimed learning for our audience. Let's jump right into it.
Hi everyone, welcome to our Humanity Rising What Cause Inspires You podcast series. Our WCIY podcasts are student-led and feature outstanding young changemakers who are creating a more compassionate and better world through service. We hope that by listening to our podcast, you will be inspired to connect with our guests, to help further their causes, or be inspired to make changes in your own communities in a cause that inspires you. By listening to our podcast, you're also eligible for service learning hours and Humanity Rising Service Scholarship Awards. Please be sure to join our group on interviews so you can easily find our many events and track your hours. Joining us today is Shreyas Girotra from Illinois. Hi Shreyas, how are you?
Good, Sahana. How about you?
I'm good. So would you mind telling me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast in the first. But my name is Shreyas Girotra, and I'm a junior at Hinsdale Central High School, which is a high school here in Illinois. Some things about me is I love science, and because of that, one of the things I do is I run the robotics team for our high school, and I also play tennis for our high school team. As I go through my experiences over the last few years, I've learned that mental health is really necessary for our generation to reach its full potential.
I completely agree. So what began your interest in mental health?
So, the first thing that began my interest in mental health was really my older sister. So, she was the director of a program at my high school called Operation Snowball. This is a state-run program that empowers youth and also encourages movement on mental health. And lucky enough for me, I was able to be pulled into it at a young age. This was back in middle school when originally the club starts in high school. So because of my sister's involvement, it was made clear to me that there were sizable opportunities for impact, and as will be seen later on, it would later encourage me to start my podcast.
That's really cool. So why did you start your podcast? You mentioned that Project Smile inspired you, but was there any other deciding factors in that?
Yeah. So as I dove deeper into mental health programs, as you said, like Operation Snowball, um, I realized that while these clubs and other programs had the right information, our impact was really limited to our own high school. And coincidentally, at the same time, I started reading a book called Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. So, in this book, he really encaptured an inspiring message of mental health. And as I went online, I was starting to see all these podcasts, despite it be Joe Rogan, David Goggins, or so on. So it really struck me with the idea that a podcast could be the exact.
Completely agree. And at what age did you start this podcast?
I started this podcast back in 2021, so I was just turning 15. Yeah,
That's really impressive and inspiring. Thank you. And how
yeah.
have you grown your podcast since 2021?
So my podcast growth has really been very complex, but also major and developmental. It started at a school level. This was with an interview with my school principal, and we first tried to understand the specific challenges that students at our school faced, And then from there, we were able to incorporate advice in my own podcast. So this began as one of the episodes. And lucky enough for me, this caught the attention of a local newspaper called the Hinsdalean. So because of my interview with Bill Walsh, our principal, I was able to gain more attention and expand the message of Mental Plateau. But from there on, it also caught the attention of the Community Mental Health Board. And this led me to one mental health and medicine. So from there, I was able to expand, get more perspectives, and also I was able to get more opportunities to increase my subscriber count and base. But from there, I was also able to grab the attention of NGOs like Humanity Rising. And I hope to take the Mental Plateau to a new level with such companies and really expand the support that the community so needs for mental health.
I agree. That's really inspiring. Humanity Rising is so lucky to be working with you in the future. We really admire all the work you're doing.
Thank you.
And I know you just mentioned this experience with this doctor expanded your view on mental health, but are there any other experiences you can recount that really, I guess, kind of brought a new perspective to it or a new understanding?
Yeah. So each episode of mine has very impressive. He was a U.S. Marine, a Yale graduate, a U Chicago graduate, as well. He was an athlete on the Princeton rowing team. So he brought that unique perspective that the mental plateau is not only about mental health, but it's also about the variety of mental plateaus. This ranges from performance plateaus, learning plateaus, and motivational plateaus. So this starts with, as I said, performance plateaus. He captured this as a physical challenge to oneself. That can range from a marathon or even like small physical goals to make yourself healthier as a human. But then there's also the idea of a learning plateau. A learning plateau, as he said, was understanding that we need to be open-minded. We need to take every opportunity to learn from our peers, our students, our teachers, whoever it may be. And finally, but last but not least, is the motivational plateau. This is attaching more to mental health. This is a consideration that we need to have that rigidity in our mind. We need to be able to establish or achieve all the goals.
That's really inspiring, and I'm sure a lot of people would love to see that podcast, so I'll have it linked below in your description. So if anyone's interested, please check that out. And what was the biggest challenge you faced though while creating this podcast?
I think one of the biggest challenges I faced was definitely getting my voice out there. So at the beginning of these episodes, I first began my first episode. That was just a casual talk on the history of mental health. That was from the 1800s to the present. How did specific scientists contribute to specific achievements? And how did we get the term of mental health as it is today? And with those first few episodes, there was definitely some challenges with making sure we were getting the right audience and a big amount of audience. So from there, we decided to change our our channel, our direction. That was interviewing figures in our society who have an impact on us. So that's when we started the idea of interviewing people. But to go further, yeah, I think one of our biggest challenges was definitely getting that right or increasing our subscriber base.
And it's definitely very inspiring to see how you've overcome that barrier and grown your subscribers, grown with the amount of people that interact with your podcast,
Mhm.
and like you
Yeah.
said, catching the attention of other organizations. So, what advice have you received from a mental health professional that worked the best for you?
Um, that's a good question. So one of my guests that brought a lot of advice was Raymond Gonzalez. So Raymond Gonzalez is a social worker as well as college counselor, and the main message that really moved me was really not to worry about the small stuff. Instead, focus your attention on the bigger picture. And this was with the consideration of the rising competitive climate in academia. And because of that, everyone is doing their own things, achieving their own accomplishments, and really running their own rat races. But we need to realize as students, or as a younger generation really, that do what your passion tells you, and success will follow instead of following what the crowd says. So, yeah.
That's really inspiring. I'm sure any seniors or even juniors thinking about college will definitely be able to appreciate that advice. I know I am right now because I'm a high school senior, so definitely.
One of the biggest advices, or one of the biggest piece of advice that I'd have for everyone is really just to start with your passion, as I said earlier. I started this podcast just for my passion, and here I am trying to grow it to larger scales. If you follow your passion, you can truly achieve whatever you want, and that's the best you can do.
It's inspiring. Thank you so much for speaking today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you to all our viewers for listening to this episode of Humanity Rising's What Cause Inspires You podcast. I hope that you were inspired by hearing Shreyas' story. If you would like to connect with him to learn how you can create a similar impact in your community or get involved with his own ventures, you can find his name and email in the description below. Please remember to complete the survey and let us know your feedback so we can make these podcasts most impactful for you. You can also watch our many past podcasts and find our many new events by joining our group on Interview. Remember to share your service story with us at any time to be featured as a guest or to be eligible for a Humanity Rising Service Scholarship. Together, we will change the world. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Mental Plateau, and be ready for more episodes. Make sure to visit Interview and join the Humanity Rising Project with the service tasks you can access on the site. Remember to be healthy as a whole because mental wellness plays a role.